I'm being completely honest, which I am, and that's the goal, um, I don't know what to talk about. Like, I know that when I talk to people on the street, or just like acquaintances and friends and stuff that I have, there's a certain quality to our um, conversations, to our dialogue, that results in like an expansion of like their previous perception. And not to say that I'm exempt from that, but like I notice it most prominently in others, which leads me to believe that I've got something to share in terms of perspective. But like my hang up is that I don't really know how to put a finger on it, because it's not just one thing. It's not like something that I specialize in per se, in terms of like a field of study. I feel like I'm just living life, and I'm learning from everything as though it's a lesson, because it is. And I don't see it as a punishment to go through difficult things. Not to say that I'm like overjoyed when I'm experiencing states of being that are really uncomfortable. It's just that I find that I'm able to approach things like that with more grace than not. Because I've got like this bird's eye view, which is sometimes very necessary and beneficial, especially given what it is that's going on in our collective world at present. What with all the war and lack of understanding of one another. And that's not to say that I'm like completely exalted and of utmost like conscious awareness and mindfulness. Like there's not really any such thing. That's just like an idea. It's like in the same realm of this thing of perfection. Like, what the fuck is perfection? It's just an idea. It's a state of completedness that brings you satisfaction as a result of it being complete, but it's really just like the completeness feeling that you're chasing, I feel like, when it comes to perfection. Because no matter what form the perfection may take, like what qualities it has, like I'm gonna have this amount of money, I'm gonna have this kind of house, like the details are interchangeable, but what you're actually seeking is a state of completedness to where you don't have to I don't want to say you don't have to worry about anything in the realm of what it is that you're attempting to be perfectionistic about. Because that's not to say that like you're going to be worried, and then even if you are, I guess all I needed this entire time was for somebody to suggest that I just don't feel worried anymore. Like, I guess like all my problems are solved, just don't worry. Like, no. But like, investigate why you feel that you want that state of completedness. Because if you really follow it through, if you were to have the things that you say that you want that would make you feel completely satisfied, I'm more than willing to bet that all it would give you is the ability, more easily at least, to distract yourself from things that make you uncomfortable. I think that the world is full of distractions and things to keep you busy and not thinking about the things that you don't really know how to handle. And that isn't to like be a put down or anything, as though like I don't go through those things, because I do, but it's just I recognize my own attempt to run away from a migraine headache, as it were. And so I can see it in others, and we're doing it at a collective level. And like, we're really good at ignoring, rejecting, disowning, denying parts of ourselves. Because it's what's expected of us and ingrained into us. And it's difficult to not adopt patterns and ways of being when everywhere you turn, it's being reinforced. This thing of, to whatever degree it may occur, like you're not good enough as you are, or like something about you needs to be different, or more acceptable, more palatable. But that's not why we're here. Not here to necessarily be palatable. No, not saying walk down the street and be shitty and be inconsiderate. But we're not here to accommodate to other people's preferred idea of us. And we're not here to embody that for them either, to make them more comfortable with the fact that their illusion about anyone or anything is to be shattered as a result. I want it like up. That would be cool. So we don't have anything to set it up on. I just gotta hold it. It's like 10 o'clock in the morning and I'm still a little sleepy. Then as far as it goes for like navigating these states of discomfort, I find it really beneficial to have the support system and people that really want to understand you and see you and hear you. And I know that not everybody has that. And see, this is like one of the things that I run into is like, I don't really know what would be beneficial all across the board because everybody's going through something so different. And it's like so different from my experience, perhaps, that I might not even be able to provide any insight. And not that that's my job to do that, but I really just want to understand why people are the way that they are, why they do what they do, why they like what they like. I know not everything has like a why like that, but I feel like a lot of people feel alone in the way that they think, in the way that they operate, in the way that they just maneuver. They feel alone. And even if they have people around them, like, loneliness can still creep in. And I know what it feels like, but it's not really a punishment for me to be alone. Like, I've grown up in such a way that I was alone most of the time. And even if I did have my family around, they weren't actually trying to connect with me in a genuine way. And that's not really any fault of their own. It's just they are where they are, and they can only perceive what they can perceive. So it's like I don't harbor any resentment because they weren't able to meet me the way that I needed to be met. But it gave me immeasurable strength in the area of this thing of solitude. And I'm not advising that everybody go out and like alienate themselves, but I guess be mindful of your relationship to this thing of being alone. Because it truly is what you make it. And if people want to put you into a position in such a way that they are like treating it as a punishment, like isolating you and intentionally withdrawing their like affection and attention from you so as to like get a specific response or like behavior out of you, I guess my advice would be not to take it personally. And is it really a punishment to be with yourself if you know yourself the best? Now, I know that we all, to some degree, have self-hate and like a rejection of aspects of ourselves. And I know it's not as easy as just a simple, like, well, don't think that. But when I say this next piece, there's a gem to be found within it, and it's to restructure and reframe your perception of what being alone means to you. Because from what I can tell, it's being painted as like this prison, but it's actually liberating in doses. And that isn't to say that like being alone can be or can't be traumatizing, because it's all circumstantial and it's all a matter of perception. But no matter the pressure from other people to perceive it in a certain way as like a bad thing, as like a painful thing. Now, that isn't negating the fact that it can be a painful thing, but this is why I'm saying there needs to be like a restructuring, a reframing of what loneliness actually is and what it means to be alone. Because people can be lonely even if they're surrounded by people, even if they have like close friends. So loneliness really is just a state of being, and I know that it's not as simple as just don't feel that way. But when you're by yourself, who's gonna stop you from doing things that you want to do that feel good to you? Only you. And it's so difficult to address this thing of like discomfort and pain and the human experience in general because it's so multifaceted. I mean, there's 7 billion of us. And we're all multidimensional, like we're multifaceted. And so if we just remove the fact that we're multifaceted for a second, that's 7 billion different perspectives. Now adding in the fact that we are all multifaceted and multidimensional, that's just compounded, and it's an infinite amount of different perspectives and ways of perceiving, all of which are true. Simultaneously, they're all true. Not that like one is greater than the other or more preferable than the other. But they all give us information about what it is that we are creating for ourselves and also collectively. It gives us information about the worlds that we're creating internally and how those are operating, and information as to what we're grounding in the 3D and like the physical realm that we see before us. Like when you see buildings and companies and stuff, like they may seem to be a part of like a pre-existing structure that was always there, like a landscape. But those are created, those are crafted brick by brick if they're buildings. Parking lots paved, no matter how like run down they are now and what they look like now. At one point in time, they were brand new, and that was somebody's idea, and there were people that constructed it. And the reason that I word it that way and that I bring that to your awareness in this way is because we seem to think that because things are in place in a solid way, that they can't change, or that it's going to be extremely difficult to change. And now that second part is actually probably very true. Depending on the solidity, I guess, if that's a word, of the structure, be it physical or societal, social structure, or like an idea that's been solidified over and over and over within like the psyche of individuals and also collective populations. We just seem to think that because of what's in front of our face now, that there's no room for new things to take its place. I'm not suggesting that I have the answers to everything and that I know what it ought to be replaced with. And when I say it, it's like any of the things that need revising. like government structures and ways of navigating life. Like, I don't profess to have any sort of conclusory solution. But that doesn't change the fact that something does need to change, and that's not to say that it's not changing already, but I think that we're quite foolish to resist it, this change. Scary as it may be. And I'm not going to say that I agree with, like, the wars and things and policies in place. But I think that those are necessary steps only because they are happening. So if those policies are being put in place and those wars are happening, that just reflects to me that we still haven't learned our lesson when it comes to those things. Because if we did, then we wouldn't be doing it to each other. And it's not enough for just some of us to be aware of why that's not something that we want to create and co-create. It's a collective endeavor. And it's so difficult to really say that I have a point in making this video, because as I'm speaking, I don't really know what it is that I'm going to be speaking about. It just kind of comes out, and then it, like, may tie into other, like, things that I've talked about prior to. But, like, this whole thing of the human experience is so multifaceted that it's not ever going to have a one-size-fits-all in any area. Like, we have to be just as adaptable as the things that we are attempting to create and dismantle. Adaptable in the way that we think, in the way that we move. Adaptable in our willingness to be open-minded and to change our mind. Which can in itself be a pitfall, this thing of changing your mind. Because it's like, there's a buggy guy in my coffee, I'm sorry. I try to keep an eye on my drinks out here because I don't want them to accidentally go in there and die. And, like, I don't really have a problem drinking things that bugs have, like, died in. Like, I know that that's probably really gross to, like, people, but, like, I don't care. It's not for you. This is my coffee. Leave me alone. I just feel bad for the bugs that crawl in here and they die. That doesn't say that I never kill bugs. I killed some stink bugs, like, a month ago, because they were in my room. I sprayed them with Febreze. But, like, I really try to not kill bugs and, like, kill things. I don't like to, but I am human after all. And let's be honest, like, there's also things that I'm doing, like, I don't always recycle everything, and that's partially because not everything can be recycled. But I am also impacting the earth in ways that I have the luxury, the privilege to be unaware of if I choose to be. I could watch Netflix all day if I'd like, and just casually get up, use the bathroom, make food, and then throw the packaging away, and then not have to worry about, like, the landfill that it goes to or the animals that eat it or get stuck in it. Like, that's a privilege to be able to put that out of your mind because it's not directly in front of your face. But it doesn't mean it's not happening. And this is not necessarily a call to like berate yourself or feel as though you need to be doing better in like a bullying kind of way. It's more so just like the recognition of how convenient our lives are and what that actually means for the world around us. I don't think that we can really afford to be mindlessly consuming anymore. And the reason that I say that is because look at where it's got us thus far. If it were actually bettering the planet by opting for convenience, we wouldn't be where we are now. We are here because we've fallen asleep at the wheel, individually and collectively. And it's a scary thing to recognize that changes have to be made when, from ground level, it's difficult to even see what changes would be beneficial because we don't know enough to know the long-term effects. Like, of course, there are some things that we can get right, quote unquote. Like this thing of like rejuvenating the soil and becoming aware of like the harmful effects of industrial farming. Like, sometimes when we do become aware of certain things that need to change and we do implement changes, it can be very beneficial. But I find that when we try to get like crafty and clever and put our hands behind our backs and say, no, like we're changing this thing. It's like, how can I change just enough to make a difference, but not enough to let go of what it is that I'm currently engaging in? It's like, yeah, I want to help the planet, but only to the extent that I still get to operate within my realm of convenience that I've created for myself. It's like, how do I change without changing? And you don't. The answer is you don't. And I think that being real with ourselves, like really real with why we're doing what we're doing. And if you don't know why, that's a dangerous place to be in. Because that means that there are a lot more things that you're unaware of in terms of your impact, in terms of things you have the power to change. I think that it's a scary thing to take responsibility for the fact that we do have the power to change things, but we don't really know how or what. At least on a larger scale. That's why it starts on an individual scale, which can be a feat in and of itself, especially when a lot of our habits and behaviors are built upon convenience and mindless consumption, myself included. I'm absolutely not exempt from this. But that doesn't mean that what I'm saying isn't of value or isn't true. And I'm honestly not going to be the person to sit here and tell you that one side is right over the other, or one perspective is right over the other. The only way that we're actually going to get anywhere worth being, as if it's like a destination or something, not to be destination oriented, but it's going to require us to operate as a team, as a collective. But what I'm seeing also is like a transposition of what I had already said, of like, how can I change without changing? It's like, how can I cooperate with other people without actually cooperating? Because what it ends up turning into, even if you do collaborate and cooperate with others, is it can turn into an in-group versus out-group situation where it's like us against everybody else and we have the right idea and everybody else is wrong, or these select group of people have the right idea and everyone else is wrong. It's not about right and wrong, it's about being open to other perspectives. It's not tossing away your perspective for somebody else's because it's going to get you different things or serve you in a different way. It's about understanding how they got to those perspectives. Because if you were in their exact same position, you would believe the things that they believe, and you would reach the conclusions that they've reached. But we're so quick to point the finger at other people and other ideologies and say, well, you're the problem. No, the problem is that we're unwilling to sit and understand one another. Because the only solutions that are going to be of any benefit at this point are ones that are inclusive of everybody, and not just the people that you would prefer them to be inclusive of, or the people that agree with you, or the people that have palatable opinions and perspectives. If that was going to work by now, it would have, but it's only got us where we are. Need I remind you, we still blow each other up. Like, we still kill each other. That doesn't sit weird with you? I'm not putting anybody down, because I definitely recognize that, like, the media and like politicians and seemingly solidified forms of information, types of information out there, generate this, or have the potential to, and have, and do, generate this state of being where it's like manufactured outrage. Like, they get you all riled up to believe in this thing, or to not believe in this thing, and say, look how crazy this is. And so then you're all wound up with nowhere to go. And so we end up fighting each other instead of focusing on the fact that there are people out here that have so much money that they can literally control things like gas prices. It's all systematic, yo. And I know it sounds like really conspiracy theory-esque, but like, the poor are getting poorer. And not to speak this into existence, but just like looking at the trajectory of what's going on, if people in quote-unquote power if they can stick their hands in the pot in such a way that they can start wars and hike up gas prices and implement policies that have nothing to do with them, and not to say it has nothing to do with them, but like, to throw my little 2 cents in on it, how you gonna tell somebody that they have to carry a baby to term when you don't even have a uterus? That will never be your experience in this incarnation. You're in a male body and you feel that you have a right to dictate what females do with their bodies. Like, that is a very in your face red flag. And this isn't me like berating the miser, but it's like, we have to recognize where it just doesn't make sense. And instead of sticking your hands in the pot trying to make other people conform to a life that you believe that they should be living, or doing things that you believe that they should be doing, or not doing things that you think that they shouldn't be doing, how about you understand what their experience is before you go meddling in their quality of life? Money doesn't provide happiness. It can provide material comfort. And that isn't to say that, like, I don't recognize the very real need at this point, I guess. And I don't want to say need, but you can't ignore the fact that, like, you've got bills to pay, for instance, or children to feed. It's not as easy as just changing your mind or seeing that, like, things need to be different. It's a collective matter. And it's all able to come to fruition in this way. All of this tyranny and greed. Because there's a fundamental lack of understanding between people, and lack of willingness to understand as well. There's a spider on my shoulder. So I guess if you think that you know, if you think that you don't have growing to do, and things to learn, and things to see, and things to uncover, I invite you to reconsider that. And a very grounded way of looking at that would be, look at the people around you. Even and especially if you have disagreements with them, or you don't agree with their perspectives. Instead of fighting them on it, how about you understand why they're feeling what they're feeling, and why they feel like attached to their perspective, because they have the same capacity for emotion that you do. They feel scared about things. They feel uncertain about things. Like, we're all collectively living in this world that's going through some crazy shit. not negating any of the pain that we've caused to one another. I'm not saying to just forget about it, but we have to start looking at it through another lens. A lens of it's not you against me or me against you or us against them. It's we're all in this together, and some of us are a little bit more I don't want to say more scared than others, but like their fear just manifests in a different way. And I really can't look at anybody else and blame them for trying to run away from their own migraine headache or run away from their own boogeyman within themselves. And even externally. If you're under physical threat, like it's only natural, like it's understandable why people would behave in the way that they do if you knew what was going on within them. But that requires understanding. It requires you to open up your perspective to be inclusive of theirs as it is, not as you would like it to be. It requires humility. It requires transparency, which is scary in and of itself. But it doesn't mean it's unnecessary. True strength is not your ability and willingness to dominate over another and force your way of doing things. Strength is the ability to transcend us versus them, you versus me, and realize that I can't be happy unless you're happy, and you can't be happy unless I'm happy. But since we're all continuously evolving and changing and growing, I can say, well, this thing will make me happy right now, but I don't know what will make me happy in 10 years. And neither do you. You can speculate, but as to whether that's actually going to be accurate is another story. So when we don't know what it is ultimately that would make us happy in the long term, I don't get to determine what would make you happy in the long term, or even in the short term, for that matter. So I feel like in this process of understanding one another, that's one of the things we really need to truly deeply understand, is that we are always changing and evolving and growing. And we need the space to do that. But if we're boxed in by ideas and societal expectations and anything that tells us that we can't be any different than who we were 5 minutes ago, like, I'm not the same person as I was 5 minutes ago. It may not be a drastic change. It can be, but it may not be. But that doesn't mean that we're not ever evolving and changing and growing. Like, my cells are replacing themselves millions of times over in the course of a day. And I'm sure that's a bit of an exaggeration, but like, you get the point. Change is constantly happening. And I feel that we need to get on board with that and allow other people to embody that as well as ourselves. Allow yourself to change. Allow yourself to see things from different perspectives, because that's the only way that we're ever going to get to this space of inclusivity, is to allow ourselves and others the freedom to explore who they want to be and what actually makes them happy and what fulfills them. I'm not going to place that unrealistic expectation on myself or anyone else to have it all figured out, because that's not why we're here. We're here to learn things. We're here to skin our knees and say, yup, that was a hell of a ride. We're here to expand on who we thought we were, who we thought other people were. And we can't do that if we're too busy trying to nail the ocean to the shoreline, as it were. Like, pin each other down, pin ourselves down. Like, yup, alright, I finally found out who I am, quote unquote. I know what I want. Yeah, for right now. What about a week from now? A month from now? A year from now? 10 years from now? 30 years from now? A lifetime from now? We have to humble ourselves enough to admit that we don't know. Which means we don't know for ourselves and we don't know for other people. And the more we try to force, the more we try to fight against anything. It isn't to say not to, like, advocate for change, but, like, resisting what is in front of your face makes it so that way you will never arrive at a space where you can move through that which you wish to change. And what I mean by that is, let's say, like, war, for example. If you are unwilling to look at the fact that that is happening and what is causing it, we are never going to be able to move through that. We have to see why that is not preferable. And the only way that we can do that is by accepting that it is happening. We need to stop running away from uncomfortable truths. Now, that doesn't mean that you're just gonna have to pretend like you like it, like eating something you don't like and you make the face. It's like, I'm not asking you to do that. I'm asking you to practice sitting with the discomfort. Talk to people about it, but not in such a way that you're trying to berate them for their own perspective, because they're going through a different version of the same thing. You may feel lost and confused and uncertain and scared, but so do they. Whether or not they're willing to admit that to you is up to them. Some people are so disconnected from how they're actually feeling that they may not even know how to be honest with you. And that doesn't mean that they're intentionally withholding, it just means it's a product of what they've been through. When you've been taught to disown, deny, and reject aspects of yourself that give you information about what your experience is, if you're not connected to those, you're not going to have a clear indication of what your experience actually is, and like what you're feeling and why, and what it means to you. This is what I mean when I say it's so multifaceted. It's not one size fits all. There are a lot of different things that go into it, which makes it feel and seem that much more insurmountable. That doesn't mean that it's the case. It just means that it's not up to one person or a small group of people to shoulder it all on their own. We have to stop thinking in terms of, I'm going to do it all myself, this hyper-independence. And get with the idea that the only way things are going to change is if we come together and actually open ourselves to be understanding of our own unfoldment and also of others. Allow people to change their minds. Allow people to explore different ways of viewing things. Allow people the freedom that you wish to have, even if it looks different from yours, because it's not. And I know it's not going to be an overnight process for any of this to change. And I'm not asking for it to be. But we can't continue to operate in this state of distraction and putting our blinders on. Now, I'm not saying I don't understand the desire to do that, because I do. Sitting with this level of discomfort on an individual and collective level is scary and overwhelming. But it doesn't mean it's not necessary. And it doesn't mean that you're doing it alone. We're all in the same boat. And we're all walking each other home, as Ram Dass said. Everybody really just wants to be understood and seen and heard. And when you approach people like that, from that space, you're bound to get a better reaction and arrive at a better space than when you started, as opposed to just completely rejecting another person's perspective. Be open to it. Even if, and especially if you disagree with it, and try to understand how they got there. I see, baby. There's a squirrel that came down. He was over there. He didn't know that I was here. When you open to another person's perspective to that degree that you are willing to sit with them and sit with their perspectives that are opposing yours, you begin to realize that there's not really that much of a difference between you and them. It's just the ways that you are going about it, and that you're attempting to alleviate your own suffering, even if you don't know what that is. We're not so different. Thank you guys for sitting with me, and for hearing me, and for seeing me. I know it's been quite a bit of time since I posted that pilot tarot video. I've been doing my own human things. I intend to continue to post things and to share my perspectives, and just let you guys know that I'm here. I'm here for me, and I'm here for you guys. I can't shoulder the weight of everything that you guys are going through, but I can let you know that I'm willing to be receptive and open to your reality, to your truths. And I'm not here to tell you that whatever you're experiencing is wrong, because it's not. You're just not alone. And that's the truth. You're not alone. I think that that's all I would say this time around. We've been talking for about an hour. I love you guys. I'll catch you at another now moment. Until next time.